welcome to this week's Pittsburgh Sportsline. I'm Mike Migliori, Chip Hayner, Smoking Jim Frazier, and Al Levine, the talking, producing machine. We had a pretty big week in sports. Crowned a new Stanley Cup champion, had a couple other new champions, and well, as usual, every week we start out with What's on Your Mind. Al, what's on your mind?
Well, you mentioned a key word called champions. So I got to give a shout out to Bill Neal and his protege, Smoking Jim Frazier. They put on a heck of a performance in 90-degree heat, 110% humidity, out in Penn Hills at Three Lakes Golf Course. And that's not really what's on my mind, but Union Rags is on my mind, folks. I gave you a winner last week. And he come in just in the last few strides. He beat Painter right at the end. And my friends are happy. We all put our money together. So we had a little win, place, and show, some exacta. So when I win once in a while, about 1 out of every 100, I'm happy to gloat a little bit about that. So, and it's a shame that I'll have another had a scratch because of a swollen tendon there. And he'll be out in the stud pasture for many years and have a great life there. And that's what's on my mind, Mike.
Thanks, Al. Jim, what's on your mind?
Hey, thanks, Magic Mike. What's on my mind is, first of all, I'd like to give a shout out to a friend of mine, Michael Vent, formerly of Plum, Pennsylvania, and now lives in Swissvale. And he watches us religiously on YouTube.
Whoa.
He's gone back and watched all 30-some episodes.
34 as of last week.
And he used to be my best friend until he says his favorite guy on the show is Chip. He's a Pirate fan, so Chipper's fan list is growing. So thanks for watching, Michael Vent. I tell you what, if Floyd Mayweather would have fought Pacquiao this past weekend, they may have had a recall vote in the Philippines. I tell you what, I think that Pacquiao, I don't know if he's not focused anymore. I don't know if Bradley is that good. I understand it was a controversial decision. Maybe Pacquiao won the fight. But his last couple of fights has really been close. This may be playing in the hands of Floyd Mayweather, who's never fought anybody in their prime. Look for them to get a little bit past their prime like he did with Gotti and many others. But also want to say, again, want to thank Al Levine, the talking machine, and the Hugathon for coming out to Three Lakes Golf Course on Saturday. Also, we had a Pittsburgh Steeler out there. Please support him, 6'8", 260-pound tight end, Wes Lyons. Didn't have an ounce of fat on him.
No.
And that just goes to show how the Steelers are covering up the macho midget Ryan Clark as free safety. Ryan Clark is about 5'10", a cheap shot artist in my opinion, pedestrian speed. They got him so far deep in the secondary that he can actually see the people in the 80th row. There's no way that there's anybody that Ryan Clark can cover these great tight ends that's in the National Football League. Al Levine seen Wes Lyons, 6'8", with a wingspan of a guy 7 foot, 260 pounds, no fat. He's going to be a mismatch. So Heath Miller and Wes Lyons, the Steelers are alive and well in a tight end position. So that's what's on my mind.
Thanks, Jim. Chip, what's on your mind?
Oh, thanks, Mike. What's on my mind tonight is, just a little update on the March for Babies, the Walk for the March of Dimes that we did on Sunday, and it was a great big success. There were thousands of people that were involved in the mark, and my team actually was responsible for bringing in close to $2,100 in donations for the March of Dimes. And
congratulations!
Hats off to everybody, and more importantly, hats off to my wife because she did a majority of that work herself. But a couple of things that are on my mind is that I think finally the jury's going to get the case against Roger Clemens. And it's only taken him 10 weeks to get here. I just hope that the jury doesn't take 10 weeks to come to a decision. And also they got the Jerry Sandusky trial is starting up, and it just sickens me that there's so many good things going on in sports, and the things that are dominating the airwaves right now are all the litigation that's going on between the NFL, Roger Clemens, and now you've got the Jerry Sandusky thing, and we have to see how these all play out. But there's been a lot of amazing things going on in sports. Mike mentioned there's a new Stanley Cup champion. Tonight the NBA Finals start, and I think we're going to have a pretty interesting next few weeks in sports. But that's what's on my mind.
Thanks, Chip. Well, Jim brought up Pacquiao fight. Obviously didn't see it, but we can probably get back to that a little bit later on. He also brought up Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather today, his lawyers filed an injunction for an emergency release from prison because Floyd's health is deteriorating. He's not getting enough to eat. He has to drink tap water instead of bottled water, and his career is in danger because of the poor conditions. He's been there 10 days.
One question: how did he get there, Mike?
Well,
how did he get there?
Floyd's in jail because of a misunderstanding about a recent match that he had against his girlfriend and her young daughter, and actually knocked both of them out in record time. But I guess, there must have been some kind of infraction there because Floyd's supposed to serve 90 days in jail. But because of the poor conditions there, his health and his career are in jeopardy. Floyd, guess what? You're in jail. It's not supposed to be a country club. Okay? They're going to try to get you out on house release, or house, you have to stay there all day. Maybe wear that thing around your ankle, which will be good for your training. When you run around in circles in your yard, they'll add a little bit of extra weight to your ankles, make your legs stronger. Or maybe you can move him with Barry Bonds, because he's under house arrest in a house that is so big that you guys can be in house arrest for 3 months and never see each other. Or maybe what they should do is get you a copy of Oz, the first season of Oz from HBO years ago about life in prison. Floyd, that's what you deserve. Okay, you're not supposed to beat up your girlfriend and her daughter at the same time. All right, it's just not good boxing etiquette. You could have got paid for both of those fights. One of the big things, and Floyd wasn't all that in such bad health until Saturday night, when he saw that Bradley got that poor decision against Pacquiao, and all of a sudden, the big money fight, he doesn't have to get his ass kicked by Manny Pacquiao. He can go fight this no-name bum Bradley and get a big payday out of it. So now he has to get out of prison. And that's what's on my mind.
It's funny because Mayweather took the fight against his girlfriend and her daughter instead of fighting Manny Pacquiao, because he wanted to fight somebody that wasn't going to hit back.
They're talking about if he gets out, he's going to want to fight Bradley. Of course, he's going to need a tune-up, which will probably be a rematch against the little girl. He's not going to risk losing to the girlfriend again. So anyway, that's what's on my mind. Some other items in boxing. Inductions into the Boxing Hall of Fame. Freddie Roach, who is Manny Pacquiao's trainer. Al Bernstein, who is a announcer and analyst for boxing. Michael Buffer, ring announcer for, God, it seems like 100 years. Let's Get Ready to Rumble. And one of my all-time favorite fighters, the loser in one of my all-time favorite fights, Tommy Hitman Hearns, is now in the Boxing Hall of Fame. Wow. And that's a guy who deserves it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And, Tommy Hearns didn't win all his fights, but he was a very good boxer. When they would get him into a slugfest, he didn't usually always do that well, but a very good technical boxer, and he's been involved in some of the greatest fights in history, fights that people talk about forever. On a sad note, another Boxing Hall of Famer, Teflo Stevenson, died today. 60 years old, probably the greatest heavyweight fighter of all time. Definitely. If Teflo Stevenson didn't live in Cuba, it wasn't stuck in Cuba, you might not have heard all that much about guys like Muhammad Ali and George Foreman, because this guy was the best fighter, the best heavyweight fighter that's ever lived. And, he won 3 Olympic gold medals. Okay, that means that he won gold medals in boxing over a span of 8 years. Nobody does that. Teflo Stevens, definitely, in my opinion, best heavyweight fighter of all time. Jim, I know you know a lot about this guy. What do you think?
Well, actually, he dominated boxing for 16 years. In '72, he knocked out Dwayne Bobbitt he only needed one hand. He had a right hand. He hit you with right hand, it was over. Wow. In '76, he knocked out Big John Tate. And in 1980, remember the Olympics was boycotted, or he had won a gold medal there. And then 1984, Terrell Biggs ran for two and a half rounds before he got hit with one punch, and that was it. And Stevenson was an old man by 1984. But like you said, over the course of 16 years, had he been in professional boxing, he'd have been the greatest of all time. I agree with you, Magic.
I second and third that. Teofilo Stevenson was an amazing fighter, and when he fought, there really wasn't any competition for him. I mean, he went into every match, and he just so outclassed his opponents. I remember watching the Olympics in Munich and Montreal, and I was just like, wow, this guy's a machine. I couldn't believe that they couldn't find a way to get him into pros and to fight a league, because that would have been the fight of the century.
Well, I can't believe they couldn't put him on one of those rafts from Cuba to Miami.
Well, think about his manager, Fidel.
Yeah.
Fidel wasn't letting him out of his compound there. He was always around. I mean, I followed some of that. But
Beard to beard.
That's one of the original beard.
Yeah, Stevenson was one of their prized possessions. They weren't going to let him go, and that's a shame because I mean he would have made a ton of money. He would have been obviously we all agree that he'd have been the greatest heavyweight fighter of all time.
He became a political pawn more or less, between the communist regime.
Unless Don King was his manager.
Well, if Don King was his manager, he might have lost a few fights, but there would be a rematch clause.
Right.
So,
well, that brings
Exactly.
me to another point. Like, okay, the fight on Saturday night.
Okay, I'm trying to.
Manny Pacquiao and Bradley. Okay, they're both under
Managed.
top rank, which is by Bob
Arum.
Arum. So he's the one that called for an evaluation of the fight, the fight tape, because he feels that maybe Pacquiao was robbed. Well, how did he lose?
Right.
I mean, his fighter won the fight.
Hold on a second.
You both can't win. I mean, Don King used to do that, but nobody else could get away with it.
The Chip, you've been around a few times. It's where the money's at. Who's betting on whom? That was the problem. He might have had all his money on Pacquiao.
well, we talked last week about how dumb it would be to bet on MMA or boxing because it's so easily fixed. In this fight, I don't think that it is so much about who was bet on who, but the consensus big money fight for the last few years has been between Mayweather and Pacquiao, and it's very obvious that Floyd Mayweather is never going to fight Manny Pacquiao, at least not while Pacquiao is still in his prime, still has the skills like Jim mentioned earlier. However, because of this, and I personally have not seen the fight, but from what I've heard, it's the worst decision since Hagler Leonard. But it's just been an absolutely horrible decision. And so I guess they're looking into it, and we will see the fight here soon. It'll be coming up on Showtime or HBO or whatever sometime this weekend, and you get a chance to take a look. But if the decision is as bad as everybody seems to say it was, well, then you got to start thinking about why. First, you got to give part of the blame to Manny Pacquiao. He should have known better. You can't let this go to the judges' scorecards anymore. All right, you have to knock guys like this out. All right.
Absolutely.
But think about it this way, okay? Mayweather's never going to fight Pacquiao, but he might be happy to fight the guy that beat Pacquiao, especially when it was such a poor decision. So now the big money fights that you can be talking about are Manny Pacquiao against Bradley. You might be able to talk about Floyd Mayweather against Bradley, which I'm sure, like I said, Mayweather's health is deteriorating so that he can get out of jail and take that fight. And, and then if they can convince Mayweather, hey, Manny's skills are kind of fading, he might actually take that fight as long as it's in his basement and his mother and sister are the judges and his dad is the referee. But, this kind of decision starts to make all those things possible. And I mean, again, everybody that saw the fight seems to think Pacquiao was an easy winner, except for the three people who counted.
Well, a couple things here. First of all, Sugar Ray Leonard beat Hagler to death. That's one. Number two, my brother and his wife was at the fight live in Vegas. He said at the concession stand, he's seen Floyd Mayweather's father, and he's just as ugly in person as he is on TV. But my brother, who's loves boxing, predicted before the fight that Bradley would win the fight. Bradley was an undefeated fighter with a soft punch, but he said after the fight that he felt that Pacquiao won the fight. And this was a guy who attended the fight and thought that Bradley would win going in, but he thought Pacquiao won the fight. So I agree with you again, Magic, that it never should have went to the scorecards. But it brings to mind that how a guy like Paul Spadafore, how well he would have done with these guys, because Bradley's a decent fighter. He got decent hand speed. He's a decent defensive fighter, but Paul Spadafore was great in all of those things. And if Bradley presented that much of a problem to Pacquiao, boy, poor Paul Spadafore really missed out on some opportunities, I think.
Well, I think that's absolutely right, and I think, and I've said this for the last couple of years. I think that Paul's kind of missing out on some good fights. Now, one of the things that Paul has going for him is he's undefeated. Mm-hmm. He's never been beaten. He's a former champion, and now you've got guys like Manny Pacquiao and Miguel Cotto who have lost their last fights. Okay, they're looking for a jump back in. Okay, so they're going to be looking for someone that they can get a decent win from. They might think that Paul's, he has been inactive just because he hasn't been in big money fights or big name fights doesn't mean he hasn't been fighting. But they don't know that. They don't know what his conditioning's like. And here's a guy undefeated, former champion. If I beat him, maybe we get back in. So maybe Paul can get those kind of fights. As far as again, I think Manny Pacquiao is a pretty good fighter. I don't know how Paul would do against him. I think that he might be able to beat Bradley. Might be a boring fight though, because they're both very defensive fighters. Although recently Paul's gotten a little more aggressive. He got a better punch than he did at the lighter weight classes. And maybe Cotto is a decent fight for him too. But if Paul would get in and get one of these fights and either do very well or win those fights, he's back in. Mm-hmm. And that's another guy that Floyd Mayweather ducked for years.
Yes, he did.
He ducked Spadafore more than Leonard ducked me. Ray Leonard ducked me for 20 years. And that's a fact, and you know that.
It's true.
And as far as, like I said, Jim will say silly things sometimes just to stir things up. Like Ray Lewis is the best NFL fighter ever. And something even more funny, like, Ray Leonard beat Hagler. That was the absolute worst decision in history. No, actually, that's not true. Ray Leonard, though, was easily the most protected fighter in all of history. The worst decision ever was when Tommy Hearns knocked him down twice around for 10 rounds, and Hearns beat him so bad that they had to call it a draw. And if you want to say, no, Ray Leonard was a great fighter and he's not overrated, explain to me how he fought some bum they dragged off the street named Donnie Lalonde, and they gave him a championship in 2 different weight classes. Yes. Am I lying? Tell me I'm lying.
You're true. He was the greatest fighter of all time with detached retina. Let's say that. Let's agree to that.
In that category, I don't know how many have been in that.
Special category.
You know what?
That's good.
I have to object to that. There's a fighter named Sugar Ray Seals who had a detached retina. He wasn't all that bad either.
Good. That was good, man.
He pulled one deep.
So anyway, you know what? Let's give Chip a chance to talk.
There you
Chip!
go.
Pirates
are in first place, and
day's not over.
The day's not over, There's a game in Baltimore tonight, and it may get rained out, it may not. And, a lot of people are saying, well, geez, the Pirates were here again, same place last year, and they're kind of looking for the same kind of collapse. And, the Pirates are a very young team. That goes without saying. And, what can happen from here on during the season? They could go either way. It's up to anybody's guess, but I tell you this, they sure are a lot of fun to watch. They're playing good fundamental baseball. They're getting great pitching. They're getting, the defense isn't spectacular, but they're making all the plays that you would expect a major leaguer to make, which, when they were playing as a AAA team in the major leagues, they weren't doing over, for quite a while. But, the interesting thing I read earlier today, the rumor mill's going, like, the Pirates need to, make a trade. They need to bring in, a bat for either one of the corners of the infield, And there's some gentlemen's names were mentioned by Kevin Youkilis, the third baseman in Boston. There's another kid named LaHare. He's a first baseman in Chicago who is having a pretty nice year. And I happen to know his statistics because he's on my fantasy baseball team. But this guy, in about 160 at-bats so far this season, he's batting .310. He's got 12 home runs. He's got 25 RBIs. Now, he sits down occasionally when, he's going up against a left-hander. His batting average and everything is considerably lower when he's batting against lefties. I don't know if, he would be an answer, but if they were going to go for somebody, I think it'd be better served to get somebody over on the first base side. He might not be a bad pickup, and, the Pirates have pitching that other teams are, envious of, and, it would be interesting to see who they might offer up, in a trade. Nothing's been said, but, that's some of the talk that's going on. I was at the game on Sunday. It was, after the walk, and watched an amazing pitching performance by A.J. Burnett. 6 innings, no hit baseball, and he was on. By the time they pulled him, he had thrown 107 pitches, and I think over 70 of them were thrown for strikes. He was deadly on Sunday afternoon, and it was ironic. A friend of mine saw him signing autographs after the game in the parking lot, and he walked up to him and he mentioned something to him about the no-hitter, and he said, in the 6th inning when the guy Alex Gordon for the Royals got the first base hit, everybody gave a standing ovation to A.J. Burnett, and he didn't know why. He didn't realize that he had a no-hitter at that time.
Wow.
It didn't dawn on him until after the fact.
Well, plus in the dugouts, they don't talk about a no-hitter. When somebody's pitching one, that's like taboo to
you don't want to
mention
jinx him.
So you don't know what's going on a lot of the times because they don't know the stats.
But, bringing Burnett in this year, and I think the thing that makes the Pirates a better team this year than they were last year in the same position is that they brought in Bedard, they brought in Burnett, and they kind of solidified their pitching staff. They've got the veteran presence there, and A.J. Burnett is a bulldog. This guy just does not want to come out of the game. He wants to pitch every inning of every game, and he wants to win every single one. And, you need somebody that just refuses to lose. And, that has got to have a positive impact on the staff moving forward through the rest of the season.
Do the Yankees have any hitters that we could get there, Chip? I'll take some of these rejects that they pay half of the salary. Look at how everybody, when A.J. Burnett come here, there were still questions on whether he could pitch anymore, all these other issues that he had. And he is a competitor. That's the one thing about him. But maybe he's happier here because they said in New York he wasn't happy.
Well, you know what? Anybody that has to play underneath that spot, like in New York City, it adds a different dimension to being a professional athlete. It takes a certain temperament to be able to survive in New York because you just absolutely get brutalized by the press.
I think Tebow will handle it all right.
We'll get to
Because
that
he
issue.
walks on water.
Tebow has
Because
help.
he'll walk across the Hudson River.
He already did. There's already rumors he did.
Tebow has help. He'd been okay in Cleveland because anybody can walk across the river up there as long as it's not on fire.
Yeah, as long as it's not on fire, as long as they haven't caught it on fire again.
Well, you know what? First, I guess everybody says, yeah, they need to trade. The only thing they have to offer is pitching, and the only thing that's keeping them alive right now is pitching. So, what do you trade away? And you brought up this guy, this first baseman. He said he's got 12 home runs, 25 RBIs, and he's batting 300. The much maligned Pedro Alvarez is only batting 200. But he has 8 home runs and 24 RBIs. He's second on the team in the categories that actually count. So he's not performing like everybody would like him to perform. Andrew McCutcheon's got to be going crazy. He's hitting 335 now. The next closest guy is Walker at 275, and then nobody else after that's even close.
Wow.
So it's all pitching right now. And I can't imagine that you're going to take one of those pitchers and trade them away for somebody that you think is going to make a difference. Now, much like what happened last year, the pitchers are carrying everything right now. And if those arms start to fail again, like they did after the All-Star break last year, well, you got to assume the same thing's happening. Now, I took the bandwagon up through the car wash up there in Monroeville yesterday, and it's all shiny and everything, but based on what happened last year, I also had ejector seats put in and took the rails off the back so it's easy to get off.
Well, and that's the thing. With a young team like the Pirates are, you got to think that what they went through last year is going to make them stronger this year. And I do believe that the deadwood that they got rid of last year, and this brings me back to another person that played for the Pirates last year, who's now playing for the Mets, was Ronnie Cedeno. Here was a guy with all the talent in the world, but he took plays off. He dogged it. And, Sunday afternoon, watching a Pirates game, the Pirates are up 3-0 in the 7th inning. And a guy from the Royals hit a ball out to right field. They just brought in Garrett Jones as a late, defensive replacement. And here the guy hits a ball, and Garrett Jones played a single into a double, and it's simply because he didn't hustle after the ball. And and it was pretty glaring to me and quite a number of other people that were at the game. And if that kind of behavior is allowed to happen, that could adversely affect the team. I mean, right now you got a young team. I mean, you watch Alex Presley. Watching that kid play inspires you. He tries with every ounce of his being. The kid's only like 5'8" or 5'9", but he hits, he runs. I mean, he's everywhere. And he hustles everything out, and that's the kind of team that Pittsburgh can get behind.
And Chip, they had to send him to the minors to find himself. Mm-hmm. That's what happened with him, and I still say Alvarez needs some of that. Just to get back, because I think Clint Hurdle's listening to the show, because we had a little conversation about Tabata, how he could run like a deer in the outfield and he couldn't run to first base. He sat him down for a couple games and he's healed.
Pedro Alvarez is second on the team in home runs, second in RBI, second in slugging percentage. If you send him down, what do you do with the rest of them?
Here's my point. If Smoking Jim can say something controversial, I want to say something controversial. 205 is just barely above the Mendoza line.
Right, and 205 is just barely above the Mendoza line. And maybe Pedro Alvarez is never going to be anything more than a 220 or a 230 hitter at his best, but he's going to be the big stick. He's going to get high RBIs, and because there are a number of guys that play professional baseball that made careers out of being 230 or 240 hitters.
How about my man Dave Kingman? If he hits 35 to 40 home runs and he bats 211, then I might be happy with him. Because Dave Kingman was like a career 230-some hitter, and he'd hit 30, 40 home runs, 45 home runs.
Here's an interesting little statistic I heard on the way over here. May 5th was the day that Andrew McCutchen hit his first home run of the year. And since then, he's hit 11.
Wow.
Okay, in Major League Baseball, there's 3 other players that have hit more than 11 home runs, and they've each hit 12. And that's Soriano, Batista, and, somebody, I can't remember who else. But, I mean, right now, the way McCutchen's playing, can we be asking questions like, does he deserve consideration for MVP? I mean, where would the Pirates be without his offensive and defensive abilities? That'd be a
They wouldn't be where they're at. He did take the month of April off. We had a guy, LaRouche, that used to be off for April, even May, and then he would get hot. And then look, he's been traded around a few times and had some success. So if McCutchen wants to take April off and sign for $51 million, I'm with him. He's doing fantastic. He's well worth the money.
Oh, I think the Pirates actually got a deal when they signed him for $51 million. I think this year he's improved so much over the way he played last year, because the second half of the season for him last year, he really didn't play very well. There wasn't anybody batting behind him. They got an interesting lineup in tonight. They've got McCutchen batting third, McGee fourth, Haig batting fifth, and they're putting Pedro Alvarez batting sixth, and Tabata batting seventh. Okay, so they put in Haig as the DH because they're playing in Baltimore tonight. And it's an interesting little mix, but you put Alvarez and Tabata, they're used to batting up in the higher spots in the order, thinking they're down at the bottom now. Then maybe make them earn their way back up into the lineup.
Hey Chip, you might be on to something. A little birdie told me that the Pirates are up 1-0, so don't change your channel yet. We don't know how that lineup will work, but they are winning right now.
Let me ask you something. Okay, is Clint Hurdle the worst manager in history? They've won 4 straight games, 8 of their last 10. So let's change the lineup around. What sense does that make? Yeah, right. You get a DH, you put him in somewhere, but why do you start juggling the lineup when you're winning 8 out of the last 10?
Well, actually, they're the hottest team in baseball right now, and
that's even more reason to change the lineup around.
Well, you know what? I mean, whatever he's doing is working, and I honestly think that Clint Hurdle is the difference in the attitude and the way the Pirates have been playing last year and this year. And I really like what he's done with the team, and I like the way he manages the team.
Hey, Chip, I got to jump on your bandwagon with both feet. I'm with Clint Hurdle. I don't understand the logic behind a lot of his moves. I don't understand how he's a hitting coach, and he says McCutchen's the only guy on the team that's performing like he should. Well, doesn't that reflect on Clint Hurdle? And I'll tell you yes, in case you don't understand. And his hitting coach, who I never have heard be interviewed. How can you be a coach and never get an interview? That's the hitting coach. So Clint Hurdle is definitely unorthodox. Whether he can win or not here, I don't know. I still have that dollar, Chip. Okay. I'm holding out that it's going to be a new North American record. And I don't understand his logic there, but he does say he manages by his gut and how he feels from pitching to hitting, and he just knows that. So
I'll tell you
who am I to argue? He's winning right now. Let's see what happens in 2 more months.
And instead of thinking about, okay, I'm waiting for the wheels to fall off this bus, I'm just going to enjoy the ride on it right now, because it's a lot of fun to be a Pirate fan. It's a lot of fun to go down to PNC Park. And if you haven't been to a game lately, you need to. You can actually watch 2 major league teams playing in the same ballpark in Pittsburgh.
That's a first.
And I'm telling you what, that's big.
And they still have plenty of tickets. I saw one of their vice presidents on TV talking about, we have some great games. They just had over 100,000 people this weekend. You had the art festival, a lot of things in the city. He goes, if you want to see some good ball games, buy some of these packages, and you'll guarantee you'll have some seats and sit right with Chip and Stephanie there.
I tell you what, everything's playing out right now. Like, they may make a run for a potential wild card spot, or, God forbid, maybe even winning a division. But, if you look at baseball right now, most of the better teams in baseball have between 30 and 40 wins. And the Pirates are right in the mix with that. Everybody says, oh, we're playing in a weak division. If you look at Major League Baseball, there's no team with 40-plus wins. There's not a big difference between the middle ground teams and the upper tier. So, anything can happen. Anything can happen.
Well, I like the parity game at the baseball, just like we have the No Fun League in football does the parity thing for a couple teams. So maybe you'll be right this year, Chip. We're not against you. We are Pirate fans here. We're just looking for some light, even though they have the worst owner in baseball who doesn't promote that winning culture. So let's see what happens.
He promotes Seven Springs.
Good point.
He's selling ski packages out of kiosks.
You can only play baseball so many times every year. You can make snow. Well, that's like Chip said, they're a very exciting team to watch. It's a lot better if you don't care whether they win or lose, because then you don't get disappointed, but they're fun to watch, and he's right. You should go down and take a look. I don't know, Jim, when you say we go down and grab us a couple all-you-can-eat seats and
all right, I'm in.
Hang out on the sidewalk for a while.
Well, you know what? If you're going to do it next Wednesday. I'll be there. The Pirates will be playing the Twins.
Oh, really? That might be a good day to show up.
Well, the weeknight games, I guarantee you're going to get games and tickets. Most weekend games, the Friday nights and Saturday nights have generally been sellouts. Sunday afternoon game, 90-degree heat. There's still 26,000 people in the stadium.
What were they giving away? Was there any giveaways?
Every Sunday they give away something for the children.
Okay, just checking.
Sunglasses or something like that. No, I didn't get another Joel Hanrahan bobblehead.
Maybe Atlanta will send up a few Sid Bream sliding bobbleheads.
That's a nice one. I saw that. Hey, we could get one. Hey, to change subjects a little bit, what do you think about OKC and Miami? I'm looking for LeBron here.
No, we're not ready to change subjects.
Oh, jeez.
Because
I thought I was talking
and producing. Wonder why Atlanta, they didn't put together a bobblehead for like a World Series win, or for like Dale Hunter or whoever. They put together a bobblehead specifically to rub it in the Pittsburgh fans' face that they knocked them out of the playoffs.
I personally think that instead of more of a rub in the face of Pittsburgh, that's a rub in the face of the lollipop on Barry Bonds.
Yes.
Because from short left field, he could not throw out Sid Bream rounded third base. My grandmother could have underhanded the ball into home plate better than that. That's one fault with Barry Bonds throughout his whole career. I didn't think he had a very adequate arm. He made up for it with his speed and with his discipline at the plate.
It isn't so much that he couldn't throw him out, because even Clemente might have missed now and then. Mm-hmm. All right. The indictment is that they sent him. Sid Bream was like 40-some years old. He had a bad leg, and the coaches knew that Barnes wasn't going to get him. They sent him.
Yeah.
In.
That's
What tells the whole story. They didn't even try to slow him up. They were.
why do you
Sent
think
him
he
right
went on the
in.
juice?
That's pre-juice.
Yeah, that was before his head swelled up like a balloon.
Well, he didn't have any clear on his skin. There was no
And then he
clear.
tried to say that he had the same hat size as he did when he was a rookie.
Not at 176
Maybe he
pounds.
just wore the hat a little bit lower when he was in school. But anyway, Al's right. The NBA playoffs are starting.
Tonight, 8:30.
Well, I think the thing about the NBA Finals, and hopefully this will equate to television ratings, is you got two of the biggest stars in the NBA right now going head to head. It's kind of like Magic and Larry Bird. You got Kevin Durant, you've got LeBron James. It'll be an exciting series, and I'm sticking with the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think it's their time.
Well, one of the things about TV ratings, though, Chip, is not so much that you've got two of the bigger stars. I mean, you used to have Bird and Magic, but you also had Boston and Los Angeles. Now you've got Miami and Oklahoma City. Not one of your bigger TV markets in Oklahoma City.
No, but I mean, if you're a sports fan, I mean, actually, these are the two best teams that in the league this year, and it's always good to see the best play the best because ultimately you get a true champion that way.
Yeah, recently, this past week, I was in Warren, Ohio, which is about 20 minutes outside of Cleveland. I was looking for Maurice Clarett. That's his hometown. I knew where all Clarett's brothers were. They're all in jail, but I couldn't locate Maurice. And the people down there in Warren, Ohio, are still a little upset that LeBron left. But the one interesting thing is I believe LeBron James, don't forget now, he's 1 year younger than Michael Jordan when Michael Jordan won his first NBA championship. So I think this is LeBron's time. I think this is his team. Everybody sees that it's not Dwayne Wade's team, but you got to take your hat off to Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is just a great player. He was runner-up in the MVP to LeBron, who's won 3 of them. But the one footnote with this game is those guys are young. Oklahoma City has the home court advantage. Their average age, they don't have a starter over 23 years old. And the NBA record for the youngest team, which is 23.7 average age, was the 1977 Portland team with Bill Walton and Shenley's own, the late great Maurice Lucas.
Yes,
so the Oklahoma City, if they win a championship, will surpass Portland as the youngest team to ever do it with their starting
And isn't
5.
that the same franchise that they come from? Or
No,
that's
that
a Seattle
was a
team.
Seattle
That's
team.
the stand.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
a Seattle
Seattle
Supersonics.
never won anything.
Right. So this would be their
Yeah,
first.
they
then.
did. Seattle for downtown Freddie Brown, 1979.
Wow.
Jack Sikma.
Wow.
Lenny
Did they win
Wilkins.
that?
Lenny
I
Wilkins
think they
was the
did win
coach.
one.
Oh, finger roll.
There you go.
Yeah, they did win one. This would be their second. Then.
But I don't like the format of the NBA. I think it favors the visiting team. All through the series, it was 2-2, 1-1-1. With the championship in the NBA, it's 2,
3-2.
3-2. So if Miami can steal one, they can close it out at home with three straight.
I don't like that. I like the format 2-2, 1-1 and 1. I mean, I think that's that's the best way to do it. I've never liked the 3 home games in the middle there.
And I think that the weakness in the Oklahoma's team, although the guys is as talented as any point guard in the game, he's fast. Westbrook is an outstanding, exciting guy. But I think that he's going to be a liability on the road after spending, 4 or 5 months with the Oklahoma City girls. When he get to Miami, he's going to lose his mind down there. So I think that Michael Westbrook going to be in a lot of trouble trying to make curfew when he gets to Miami.
Well, I think one of the guys that's going to make a fairly big impact for the Oklahoma City Thunder is Harden.
Ooh.
I think he is the wild card there because
Is he going to shave before the game?
I hope not. I hope not. Because but no, the guy has been an amazing had an amazing run lately, and I think he's really been the difference maker in the Oklahoma City Thunder. They got him to the finals this year. Last year they lost in the Western Finals to the Dallas Mavericks, and why do you think Meta World Peace took him out? Because he knew the Lakers were going to be playing him in the first round. He tried to ring his bell so he could, didn't show up. Didn't work so well.
That was an accident.
Just a little suspension, that's all.
Well, I tell you what, I think that before the game, it should be. I think the whole world would like to see. Maybe ABC can carry it like they used to do the strongman contests. Let's have a bench press contest with Kevin Durant and Boss. Kevin Durant, when he was coming out, couldn't bench 135 pounds, and that was the knock against him. And I think Boss is a little thinner than he is. So you got two big men that are very talented, but they're not going to be real physical under the boards.
Hey, as long as they're scoring points. Look at Bosch the other night. What was he, 8 out of 10?
Yeah.
Shooting threes out there. That was shocking.
Well, you got to tip your hats to the Celtics because they did push the Heat to the limit. They took them to 7 games, and I was very surprised when Boston went up 3-2 in that series, and I was like, can they possibly get it for one more game? But I kind of woke up the sleeping giant in the Miami Heat, and they slammed the door on them in Game 6 and closed it out in Game 7.
Well, it was something that LeBron come through with 45 points that night too. And he was taking shots at the end like we were criticizing him on the show that he wasn't. He was
the LeBron James of the past, that's the kind of adversity that would cause him to collapse like a house of cards. So, maybe he's, changing his spots.
Well, I'm staying with Miami and LeBron in 7.
Is what they call LeBron King James?
Yes.
The only king without a crown, and maybe he'll change that this year.
Nice.
Speaking of kings with crowns,
Did I get a second for you?
How about the Los Angeles Kings?
Mike, is it time? Is it time?
They went 3-0 on the New Jersey Devils, and the Devils made a series out of it. They won 2 in a row, but the Kings. And I believe in the game last night, there's some kind of foolish penalty that they really kind of
Scuderi.
Yeah, when that really did the Devils in because the Kings scored 3 goals while they were in the
5-minute
major, and that was like game over at that point.
Guy boarded Scuderi, got a 5-minute major, and during a 5-minute major, you can score as many goals as you want. The guy doesn't come out of the box, and LA went up 3-0. And that's pretty much the end of that.
The way Quick's been played the whole playoff series, that's all he needed was 3 goal lead.
The Kings,
but congratulations to the LA Kings.
Yeah, great run. They were the 8th seed. They knocked out the 1, the 2, and the 3, and only lost 2 games during that whole series. And then they played against New Jersey. Only lost 1 game to them. So won the Stanley Cup in 19 games. I mean, don't get a lot better than that.
And one of my favorite coaches is back in the coaching, Tarian.
Yeah.
Michael Tarian's now, again, the head coach of the Montreal Canadiens.
And I'll tell you what, as a coach, that is not a job that I would want to take. I mean, you want to talk about somebody that's not going to be allowed to sleep at night.
Well, he's been there before. Randy Cunneyworth was the coach, and the mayor of Montreal complained to the ownership because he didn't speak French.
And he no longer has a job.
So he no longer. I mean, he didn't.
And that's a great point.
Yeah. He wasn't the coach that led them to the horrible season. He got the job like about a month left in the season, and the mayor of Montreal was upset because he didn't speak French.
Wow.
So
and Tarian doesn't speak English that well. He was just starting to get very well, speak a lot better, and they got rid of him. And then Bylsma got to take over like Mike Tomlin. It started a winning streak. Smoking Jim taught me this stuff. I'm glad to learn some of these things.
And is there a conspiracy theory?
Yes.
I'm a
conspiracy theory guy.
Theorist.
Serious, that's right.
Yeah, you're a serious theorist.
Everybody knows that I love Big Ben. The only quarterback that ever played this game that was tougher than Big Ben was, Brett Favre. But the only game that Big Ben ever missed where he probably could have played was when the Ravens had a bounty out against him and he had the concussion and wouldn't play, and Hines Ward got upset. Big Ben and his lovely wife are expecting a baby. And the baby is due Ravens week. Big Ben gets a chance again to sit out against the Ravens and prolong his career. Way to go, buddy.
Now, I'll tell you, one thing that should make the Steelers highlight reel this year is the fact that Terrell Suggs isn't playing. They should just get that headline up there because he won't be playing this year, and that's a lot of damage to Baltimore's team. Not having
You take the NFL Defensive Player of the Year, and I mean, regardless of whose team, whether it was when the Steelers lost Troy or whatever, you can't lose that kind of talent and not have it affect the way your team plays.
Well, when you got the greatest player to ever play the game, Ray Lewis, back again for another season, Ray will find a way to inspire those guys to pick up the slack.
I don't know. My new friend Wes Lyons, I want to see him going downfield. He is just that. Thanks for introducing us. What a nice guy. He has a book coming out also. You didn't mention that. He has a book that's going to be coming out in a couple months. I can't wait to read that, to hear his stories. Very down to earth. The shape that he's in, I was shocked that he's 260 pounds.
How long has he been playing in the NFL?
This will be his second season.
Yeah, that's probably worth a book.
Yeah, autobiographies, bro. Yeah. Those Steeler Nation guys are arrogant.
Hey, speaking of books,
My life on the practice squad. Let's go.
No. He got
New York bestseller.
I got a couple tips. It was back maybe some West Virginia days.
Okay.
He was giving me some inside info, and then I didn't get to find out the other guy who was walking around with his book. You didn't even introduce me. I didn't introduce myself to Rayco, and he has a book, Blessed or Cursed.
Yeah, that's true.
He wouldn't let me read the book, but he was holding on to it in that heat with Penn Hills. His hands were melted to the book.
Rayco don't like white people.
That's
Well,
right.
he talked to me.
Not only that, Rayco ain't going to let you read it until he learns to read so he can read it first.
Oh, I invited him on the show, too, to talk about his book.
I didn't invite you to the president and introduce you to the president of the Black Panthers either.
I know you didn't. Why were they on the side of the tent there? They wouldn't let me in that side of the tent. Son of a gun.
But
it was fun.
But to look at Wes Lyons, I'm sure that his days in West Virginia in his book at 6'8", 260 will be similar to some of the chapters in Wilt Chamberlain's book.
10,000.
Yeah, but a guy
He was
that
on his
claimed-
way to a pool party
Wait.
as we spoke.
But a guy that claimed to have bedded
What's
that
it?
many women and his nickname was Wilt.
I don't know that the Lions has enough experience to have an interesting book. But I guarantee you Rayco Saunders' book is interesting. Rayco Saunders
I read
may
that
have been
one.
one of the greatest fighters that ever come out of the city too, but he was so mismanaged and made so many bad decisions as far as fights to take. He would go to take fights that he knew he wouldn't win unless he got a knockout, because he'd go into this guy's hometown and go in and get the payday knowing that he couldn't win a decision no matter what. But Rayco was always in great physical condition. He was always a very, very good fighter. And I don't know if you like white guys or not, as far as what Jim said, but I always liked him. I always thought we got along pretty good. And I would be really interested to read some of that stuff.
I don't read many books. I'm still
that's
trying to read
true.
the book. That,
Yeah, thanks, buddy. I'm trying to help
he
you
gave me
out.
a book about 100 pages. I'm through about 17 pages in about 6 months. But I
That's
did
not
read
bad.
Rayco's book, and I tell you what, if that book is not turned into a movie, one thing about Rayco is very honest guy. Not only does he drop names, but real names of the police and the whole bit. And the one thing about Rayco, he was shot he was stabbed at the age of 15. He was shot at the age of 21. And Rayco was in the same jail facilities as Bernard Hopkins. Wow. So if you want to be a champion, go by way of Grateford Federal Prison. And he came out and became a professional boxer after that. But his fight, he was a former drug dealer. He mentions names, situations, and I tell you what, it was a great read. I enjoyed the book.
Well, we
I
have a
couldn't put it
filmmaker right
down.
on this set here that Mike Migliore.
Well, Mike,
Rayco
wait a minute.
Paul.
Mike can never make that movie. All the black guys in Mike's movie die in the first 30 seconds.
Not Rayco.
No, that's not true. I drag it out. You don't throw everybody in 30 seconds.
Rayco.
The bro must go in Mike's
That's
movies.
only horror films. The bro must go. That's standard.
Well, we got a moment, Rayco.
But Rayco, I mean, Rayco was he's quite a story. I mean, seriously, there's some interesting. Rayco didn't always make the best decisions, like I said, and sometimes maybe a little bit outspoken. For example, when you're charged with intimidating witnesses, and you show up in court with a T-shirt on that says "Don't be snitching," that might be a bad decision.
Rayco. Call in.
Did that happen?
Was that
That was an honest to God.
Was that a subliminal message?
I don't think it was all that subliminal.
Chip, that was his subliminal message.
Hey, you know what? We're with the lighter end of things. I heard a little something about Emmanuel Sanders today. He was a representative for an anti-littering campaign in Pittsburgh, and they fired him for it because he got arrested for littering.
Oh,
Tenderfoot.
And how that was news. I saw that on Channel 4's website, and I was like, wow, it's a slow day. It's a slow day.
No. Remember what I always tell you. Yeah. Nothing in the world worse than a reporter with nothing to write.
Yeah.
Hey, who has the what's that special on NFL Network? Is Hard Knocks? Who has the Hard Knocks this year? Miami Dolphins. And they signed Ocho Cinco.
Right.
Come on.
That's how they got the show.
Yeah, that's how they got it.
HBO told them, look, you guys are boring. They said, we'll sign Ocho Cinco. No problem.
You know what? The next thing you know, Terrell Owens comes knocking on the door.
Maybe his agent, Dr. Phil, can get him a shot.
It'll be T-Ocho Hard
Yeah,
Knocks.
T.O.J.
No. Terrell Owens didn't want to go to Miami because he didn't want to be on another team where there was another wide receiver that was like loudmouthed and got a lot of headlines. So he's talking to San Francisco right now.
And I think he's just going to be. He can keep on talking to everybody because I think the NFL is so sick of Terrell Owens and his routine. But the Hard Knocks, what a waste. I mean, look at Ocho Cinco. I mean, if you can't play for Bill Belichick in New England, I mean, obviously he's seen something that that other people are going to find out.
Well, yeah, I hate to bring this up again, but Terrell Owens, who is a loudmouth and gets a lot of headlines and stuff like that, has never been arrested for beating his wife or beating up a paper towel dispenser or raping somebody in a bathroom. But he's one of these guys that nobody wants.
Right. He hasn't beat up his girlfriends. He's just never paid them any child support for the half a dozen kids that he's fathered before.
Great point.
He don't beat them.
At least supposedly they were willing participants.
But I tell you what, if I was, is it HBO that got Hard Knocks?
Yes, it is.
If I'm HBO and HBO, make a lot of bad decisions. HBO stands for Help a Brother Out. But if I was HBO, I would always have the New York Jets because the greatest coach in the National Football League, other than Jim Harbaugh, is Rex Ryan. And Rex Ryan is just an entertaining guy. You got Tebow there. I think every year Hard Knocks should go to the New York Jets.
And I think the Jets, because of all the negative publicity they had last year, they want to stay under the radar because they got to compete against the Giants, the defending world champions, and they got to share that market. And Rex Ryan, as good of a football coach as he has made himself look like quite the buffoon the last couple of years by opening his mouth and inserting his foot. So I think hopefully he's learned a lesson, and instead of coming up with bulletin board material, he just coaches the team and wins games and lets that speak for itself.
Well, they. The Giants gave Conklin an extension.
Wow.
So it's pretty much guaranteed that they're going to suck for the first 12 games. And he'd explode for the last 4 to save his job. That's the way they do that up there.
That's how he draws it up. That's obvious. I can't believe they gave him a couple years, too. But we'll see what happens there.
Well, that's... Yes, that's pretty much what's going on in the NFL.
Anything else? I'll go on record, and it's not very popular, but I'm hoping, and because he said he didn't do it, and I believe him until he's guilty. I believe that Jerry Sandusky is innocent, and I'm hoping that this trial will he will come out and it will come out clean. But I think it's getting ready to get crazy up there.
I think it's going to get real ugly up there, and I know already in the testimony that I've picked up bits and pieces of, it's fairly disturbing. Some of the things that are being alleged that have happened, and and it's going to be up to 12 jurors to decide whether or not it did or it didn't. But I think it's just this is going to be a big embarrassment for Jerry Sandusky, for Penn State University, and and unfortunately, Joe Paterno's name is going to get dragged into this, and it has no business being involved with this trial at all, because this absolutely has nothing to do with Joe Paterno.
Well, they can't get him, so they subpoenaed his wife and kid.
Right? Did they?
Yes, they did.
And who's a defense? That guy should be shot for even. You don't leave that family and deal with their grief. I mean, I know you're entitled to an aggressive defense, but there's just some things that, what happened to decency?
But even worse with this, Sandusky's a guy that created this. Look at the second mile shut down and everything. And then you talk about all these people, the president, Spanier, they're saying that they did cover it up. They have more proof and evidence. So like I had predicted with one of the predictions, this could be the biggest scandal in U.S. history once they get past Sandusky, because everybody else above him, that whole area covered up a lot of these things. Oh, all of them. Wow. It's gonna go everywhere. They all had knowledge of this stuff.
There's not going to be any winners in this trial at all.
No, it's terrible.
There's the alleged victims, and and their families, and their names and faces are going to get dragged through the mud all over the news. They're not going to be able to show their faces in public. If the Sandusky family, and if it ultimately ends up being that he's acquitted, look what's happened to his name and his reputation over the last 6 or 8 months. You can't make this stuff all go away. Well, and then, the University of Penn State has been, got a black mark against it. It's going to take decades to make go away.
The problem with this is that in a case like this, it's basically this guy saying, no, I didn't do it, and these 30 people are saying, yes, you did. If you're their defense lawyer, the only real option you have is to drag as many people into it and splash as much blame on as many people as you can to try to get your guy to look not as guilty, and maybe spread it around a little bit. Personally, I think even whether he's innocent or not, I don't know. It looks like it's pretty much stacked against him. But whether he's innocent or not, I think he has no chance of winning it. No chance at all. Because there's just way too much stuff stacked up against him.
So if he goes to jail, it'll pretty much be a life sentence at his age.
Yeah, well, it might be a life sentence anyway. But
if this is even true, the victims out there, that is so sad for somebody to prey on them, and I just can't even comprehend that somebody would do that. And there's so many people out there like that. So we should pray for the victims here, and whoever's guilty, that'll get sorted out eventually.
Speaking of trials, Roger Clemens going to the jury still.
It's only taken him 10 weeks to get to the closing arguments. I think that's a speedy trial.
America.
We're entitled. We're entitled.
All these charges were trumped up against Roger. He had to defend himself, and
you know what?
He took his time doing it.
You know what I found ironic about the whole thing is that, they decided yesterday that Roger's not going to testify. Well, that's what got him in trouble in the first place. So this time they finally learned. Roger, shut up! Don't say anything. Okay, you're not going to get arrested for perjury if you don't say anything.
Well, you got to give Roger Clemens a couple compliments here. First, he hired some great lawyers that finally told him to shut up. And then his withering stare wore down Andy Pettit. Andy Pettit was the key to this whole case, and he decided not to say a word. So that's one of the reasons this case, and as my friend here with conspiracy theories, that's what's happening here. The withering stare did him in.
Al's right. There's a withering stare. We'll see you all next week. See our withering stares next week. Thanks for tuning in for Pittsburgh Sportsline, and check us out on YouTube.